Hi, everyone. Welcome to Beguiled by Books. Today, I'm going to tell you my 12 favorite books that you should read if you're in your 30s. Let's get started. As I approach the end of my 30s, there are quite a few books I have read that I thought I wish I'd read this earlier in my life, or I wish I'd read this just even earlier in my 30s. I do have 8 books that you should read in your 20s. So if you haven't seen that, pop over and watch that after you watch this one. But there are definitely some books in your 30s that you can read to help maximize your life. And these are all nonfiction books. The first book I would start with is Atomic Habits. And I love this book because it really digs into the science behind why habits are created and how you can easily help yourself create new habits using small, tiny changes rather than have to undertake some crazy new big habit structure when you're focusing on the wrong thing. I thought this book was really helpful when I read it back in 2019. Since then, I have been able to implement a lot of the tips and tricks and techniques that James Clear recommends. Things like small habit trackers or breaking things down into teeny tiny components and then just focusing on layering those over time. It's all been really helpful to be able to do lots of different things in my life and create the habits that I'm really looking for. So the earlier you can read that book, the better off you'll be. Now, if you pair Atomic Habits with this next book, Scarcity Brain, you will go even farther. I've said this before, I will say this again. Scarcity Brain is kind of the counter to Atomic Habits without really intending to be. Scarcity Brain is all about why we have bad habits in the first place and how we can get out of the scarcity loop that keeps us in those bad habits, whether that's drinking or gambling or overeating or shopping too much, whatever those different habits are that we wish we could curtail a little bit more. Scarcity Brain digs into the science behind why we do that and helps us understand how we can get out of it. So combining Atomic Habits and Scarcity Brain will really help you level up all of your daily habits that you want and get rid of the ones that you don't want that are holding you back. Now, in my book for the books you should read for your 20s, I recommended Deep Work by Cal Newport. So the book that I think you should read in your 30s is going to be Slow Productivity by Cal Newport. So definitely goes along the same lines as Deep Work, but Slow Productivity is all about focusing on what matters. How can you really dig into the 1 or 2, maybe 3 things that are the big things and clearly set expectations with people who are asking you for other things. He does a great job of giving you frameworks and templates for having those conversations of, hi, I understand you want me to do X, and currently with my priority list, I'm looking at being able to tackle this in approximately 4 weeks. If that doesn't work for you, maybe you could ask so-and-so to help. Really being able to set those boundaries with the people that you work with and understand more clearly what productivity is, because it's not a flurry of emails all day. Is the needle moving if you've sent 100 emails, 1,000 emails? Probably not. But if you clear 3 or 4 hours and really think about what the problem you're trying to solve, you can make a lot more headway. And slow productivity really helps you with that. The next book is a book that I've recently read and loved called Rage Becomes Her. Everyone, especially women, but everyone should read this book and understand not just the emotion of rage itself, but why women are feeling this and compartmentalizing this and locking this feeling away deep down inside and not recognizing it. Women will often say things like, oh, I'm frustrated. Oh, I'm disappointed. Oh, I'm something. But what the real feeling behind all of that is just unbridled rage at so many different things. And the more intersections you find in life where your identities meet, the more rage you're likely to feel. And the author does such a great job at exploring different nuances from the LGBTQ and trans communities to the different races and ethnicities that are out there who have had to assimilate into different cultures and how those intersections come into play. It's a wonderful book. It will fill you with rage. You will want to throw the book out the window, but I mean that in the best way possible, because it is so important to have these conversations and to understand what so many women, especially those who've come before you, have experienced and how they've gotten through life in a society, in a culture where rage is not accepted, especially from women. Definitely read Rage Becomes Her in your 30s. The next book is by the same author. It's a new book she's got coming out in 2024 called The Resilience Myth. And as someone who has studied Stoicism and is all about resilience and mental fortitude and toughness, I was quite curious to know why resilience is a myth and what myth was I believing. And I really enjoyed how the author explores resilience as this lack of community, this lack of support structure that too many people find themselves without. And it's so important that we are not relying on just ourselves to get through the challenges that people face in life, and needing a support structure, needing a community to lean on whenever you need it. Maybe it's watching a kid or a pet or bringing you food when you're under the weather. People can't help if you don't share that with them, however. So the resilience myth talks about all the societal, cultural barriers that have been put up, that we ourselves put up and don't know about it, and makes you start thinking how you can break some of those down so that you can live a more connected life, which becomes very important in your 30s, especially as you may partner up with someone, you start staying home a little bit more, those social activities start dwindling, your social calendar is a little less full. That's a great book to read in your 30s so you can maintain that community while still honoring yourself and your authenticity. The next two books are actually yet another pair. It's Come As You Are and Come Together. And these two books are really interesting because they're all about acceptance. Yes, they are about sexual connection in long-term relationships, but what I really took away is self-acceptance from these. Knowing who you are and being able to communicate that effectively to your partner is critical in those physical relationships. There's so much more that you can take away from this book, though, that's beyond that physical relationship, and develop deep, meaningful relationships, and not just with a romantic partner, but with your friends, maybe even with your family, and how to communicate the feelings that you're feeling to those people for deeper, more meaningful connections. So I really like these, and I really like that as we go into our 30s and we really start becoming who we're meant to be and working on ourselves more, these books are about knowing that deep down inside, being able to accept who you are, love yourself, and honor yourself by communicating your needs. The next two books, again, I have another pair by the same author, are Wintering and Enchantment. And what I like about both of these books for people in their 30s is they help you process new stages in your life. Maybe in your 20s, you haven't experienced grief and the loss of someone, or you haven't experienced a major life change like getting married or having a child. But by the time you get to your 30s, maybe you have. So Wintering talks about those stages in your life where you go into a winter. Maybe it's a little bit of a depression. Maybe you just want to hide from the world and hibernate and kind of become a recluse for a while you work on something, or you don't know you're working on something and you're becoming the next thing, like you're a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. You need that time. And Wintering is all about what that time means, how it can feel, and how you can make sure to respect when your body is telling you that you need this time so that you can get through it faster and more effectively, and you don't continue to have those seasons of winter without the springs and the summers and the autumns. On the other side of that, Enchantment is all about, as the subtitle suggests, awakening wonder in an anxious age. So having been through the pandemic, having been through lots of cultural changes and all the doom scrolling that we're doing online, how can we find the beauty and the wonder in day-to-day life? What about when we were children and we could get enchanted by trees and by bugs and cool stuff like that? Catherine May really goes into that detail and talks about how simple things like a cold plunge in the sea for a morning swim, or just taking a walk in nature with no rhyme, no reason, no aim, no phone, can be really healing to the soul and to the mind. And just awakening that little spark in so many of us that we've pushed down and buried and had beaten out of us by so many challenges. Enchantment helps you, again, reawaken that and really reflect on that lovely bit of wonder we all had as children and bring that into your adult life. So it's a great book to read while you're in your 30s, having experienced some of life's upheavals by this point. The next book that I think everyone should read in their 30s is a book called Braiding Sweetgrass. And this may seem a little counterintuitive as a book to read in your 30s, but it's about the author, who is an indigenous botanist, if I'm not mistaken, getting back to her roots and to her people, and how science and botany have really helped her reconnect with her native heritage. And I love this book for people in their 30s because it gets you thinking about your connection to not only nature and its beauty, but your heritage. And is that something that you want to continue? Is that something you want to change and break some cycles and better understand how outside influences affected your parents, your grandparents, your ancestors, and you can potentially change some of that? And it's a beautifully written book, and it will really just make you think deeply about yourself, that connection to the larger world, and help you realize that we have such a tendency to think small things are so big because we're in such small bubbles. But in the grand scheme of the world, we're just tiny specks in the cosmic universe. And Braiding Sweetgrass does such a beautiful way of explaining that to the reader, that I think when you're in your 30s dealing with so many things, it's great to step back and remember what that's like. The next book you should read in your 30s and possibly your 20s, depending on who you are, is The Age of Magical Overthinking. And what I really love about this is how Amanda Montell, the author, digs into how we make meaning out of nothing to help us explain things that can't be explained. And she does such a good job of being unbiased and reporting different effects and reporting different ways people often feel in situations, and their behaviors, without having the reader feel judged. And you can easily look at that and say, oh, that's crazy, I would never think like that. And then the next chapter you go, oh, that might be me. Oh, it's definitely one of those books, and it's really fun. It's a quick read, but it helps you kind of take a step back and look more clinically at your feelings of anxiousness, or even if you've been diagnosed with anxiety, helps you see that in potentially a new light. And again, step back from it, remove it, and say, oh, all these people might feel this way, or a bunch of people might feel that way about this thing. One, that's great, I'm not alone. And two, I have the choice to continue or not continue feeling this way about that thing. So it's a great book as we all start maybe feeling a little more anxious as we get into our 30s. The final book that I want to leave you with as a book you should read in your 30s is called The Little Book of Hygge. And Hygge is a Danish word. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, so if I've got any Danes watching, I'm sorry if I butchered the word. But I love this book because this concept in Denmark, and it's also in other Nordic countries, this concept is all about coziness and just creating a home and a life and an atmosphere that you feel good in, having great lighting, having soft, squishy blankets, having good books around you, having candles or movies or Lego or plants. It doesn't matter what makes you happy, but creating an environment that you love going into every day and knowing it's your safe space and that you can relax there. And as people are getting out of their 20s, figuring out who they are in their 30s, Creating a space to be authentically yourself is so important. I cannot stress the importance of having that space that's yours, even if it's a shared space, some nook or corner of that space that is truly yours for you to go and feel safe and to do the things that you love, whether it's paint, read a book, or something else. Again, maybe build a Lego car, maybe it's knit a sweater. It doesn't matter, but being able to do those things that are your hobbies, that you love, that bring you joy for nothing other than the pleasure of doing it. So definitely read that book as you are in your 30s so that you can start cultivating more of that hygge in your life. What books do you think people should read in their 30s? As always, I would love to know. Please share with the community by dropping a comment below. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. Have a fantastic day.